Hi everyone, thank you for joining me again for the recording of this week's blog. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to be recording things that I wrote in the past because I'm out of time. We're so busy right now. So we're going to be talking about the death experience, and it's a very personal piece for me, so I'm just going to get right to it because I'm hoping that I get through it without getting all teary. So the name of it is called Heaven's Doorway. Everything seems off kilter now. My world has shifted from its familiar, stable, and anchoring axis to one of chaos, uncertainty, and pain. The balance of energies that kept it rotating, evolving, and harmonic have been lost. The central matriarch in our family has removed her physical self and has left only her spirit and soul behind. An apparition of new normal continues to peek out from behind and within the shadows of death, only to be forced back in amidst the torrents of tears and the insurmountable anguish of sadness and sorrow. It was a glorious Sunday morning in August at Steve's sister's house in Locust Valley. My husband's family members had gathered for an end of summer bash. As I sipped my piping hot coffee and allowed the warmth to soothe me, I was reminded of how lucky we all were to be together. Enveloped in sweet gratitude, my eyes began softly gazing at my surroundings. Beyond the lovely outdoor breakfast nook where we sat, a sprawling backyard deck overlooked an endless expanse of green grass, flowers, and many other varieties of flora. Nestled off to the side among a few long hanging graceful trees was an unobtrusive little pond, sporting a gentle cascading fountain in the center. It was the perfect adornment to this picturesque, beautiful, peaceful paradise. Suddenly, the ping of my cell phone yanked me back and thrust me into that annoying, necessary little technological time consumer. It was a text from my sister Cindy, who lived with and cared for my mom. "We almost lost Mom last night," she wrote. "I couldn't wake her. I sat for hours with her praying the rosary, crying, and saying goodbye. Hospice says Mom is actively dying now and has about 2 weeks left, maybe." I winced back tears as I read and reread her words over and over again. We were all expecting this news at any time, but the reality then seemed incredulous. Actively dying? I questioned. What does that even mean? Does it even matter what it means? No, it doesn't. She's dying. She's really dying. Mom is dying. Mom, the one person in the entire world who truly knew me from before I was born and beyond, the person who was always eager to hear everything I had to say. She embraced my quirkiness, eccentric style, out-of-the-box thinking, and my deep desire to understand the spiritual meaning of just about everything is leaving this world, my world, me. My thoughts were reeling. My conscious awareness, or my enlightened self, attempted to offer me an esoteric, ultra-wise, and preachy speech about the continuation of the soul. "There's no death," it crooned. "Death is an illusion. She will never leave you. Your relationship now will just change from physical to physical spiritual, blah, blah, blah." I didn't want to hear any of that, not then anyway. Of course, I knew it all to be true and had talked to many of my clients and students about the afterlife, heaven, and yes, the continuation of the soul through eternity. However, in that moment, I was a 5-year-old child who needed her mom to bandage a boo-boo or scraped knee. I was a young tween who first noticed voice and looked to her mom for understanding about those new feelings and curiosities. I was a young woman who got herself into more trouble than she could handle, and her mom was there to help guide her out of the darkness and back to her true self. At the same time, I was an aging woman of 65, longing for her mom to help her heal her badly broken and sorrowful heart. I abruptly got up from the table and went outside to the deck so I could release the torrents of silent tears that would have it no other way. I held my abdomen with one hand and my heart with the other. Waves of nausea gripped my intestines and twisted them like a pretzel. Sharp, intense pain pierced my heart as stifled wails of anguish longed to be unleashed but couldn't be, at least not then. Immediately, the text from my 7 siblings pinged with abandon as everyone wanted to know what to do. Should we come? Is she aware? Cindy, do you need help or support caring for her right now? On and on it went until finally we all came to the same conclusion independently. We all had to know, needed to go and say goodbye. We decided we would take turns. Stephanie, Mark, and Cindy lived in Florida with Mom, where Mom was. So Mary Pat and Terry Sue, my sisters, went for 4 days first. She was weak and bedridden and slept most of the time, but she was cognizant for the most part. Kate, my another sister, went next for a few days, and she was much less aware with brief moments of consciousness. I went next with an order for my siblings that it was my job to, quote unquote, get Mom home. I was terrified. I prayed and prayed that I would be guided to say or do whatever was needed to be there for my precious Mom in her last moments. I walked into her bedroom in her home. Her frail, diminished form lay motionless in the hospital bed. The spirited, determined, fashionable, and also loving diva of a lady was unrecognizable. I placed my hand over my mouth and gasped as grief-filled tears streamed from my eyes. I sat down in a small chair beside her and held her hand, stroking her hair and crying. She was not conscious, and I wasn't sure exactly what to do, so I decided for a moment just to, quote-unquote, be. She slowly opened her eyes and looked expressionless at me. I reached for the whiteboard to communicate with her since her physical hearing was gone and her hearing aids were ineffective. "Hi, Mom, it's Drew," I wrote. She gave me kind of, "don't be ridiculous" look, and with a barely audible voice, she said, "I know who you are, Drew." I laughed through my tears, and she closed her eyes again. A short while later, she opened them and whispered, "I need more from you, Drew." Her eyes closed once more, and she drifted back into that elusive world between worlds that I was not privy to, at least for the most part. And that was my cue. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I had to help her in her crossing over. Observing her semi-lifeless form, she appeared to be either unconscious or in a coma, but a voice urged me to talk to her and assured me she would hear. So I did. Dad's spirit was in the room, hovering above her, and I knew he was there to help. I sat for a long time, holding her hand and telling her it was okay to let go and go home. "Mom," I said quietly through my softly falling tears, "you did so much more with your life than even God expected. Look at all of your children and how loving and kind we all are. You did that. You shaped us all into who we are with your unconditional love. It's okay to go home to God and to Dad. Dad's here right now, right above you, and he's reaching for you. He's going to help you and take you home with him. Reach for his hand, Mom. Reach up and hold it." With that, as she lay unconscious with her eyes closed, she began moving her lips in unrecognizable speech, and her hands started like just lifting upward toward the ceiling. I knew her soul could hear me even though her physical ears could not. I was sure she felt Dad's presence and hopefully she saw him. She seemed peaceful. I was grateful but devastatingly distraught at the same time. A moment of fear rose as I realized I might be all alone with Mom as she took her last breath. I didn't want to be alone. I wanted all of my siblings with me, all 8 or 7. Most were not in Florida at the same time, however. I called Stephanie at work, and she came quickly. We both sat with her, comforting each other as the reality of our impending loss loomed ever closer. She did not die at that moment. I think it was because she had yet to hear from her last child, my brother Christopher, who had gone through a health issue and wasn't cleared to fly at that point. Since her soul was able to hear me, Cindy figured that if she heard his voice on the phone, her goodbyes would be complete. Chris called. Cindy held the phone close to her ear as her body lay unconscious. She turned her head slowly towards the phone, so we believed her soul heard his voice. Shortly after, my amazing mother took her last earthly breath and floated home with Dad, holding her hands, and in the accompaniment of a multitude of angels, I'm sure. Now the real grieving has begun. I still need you, Mom, so stay close. Whew. That was not easy to do. But let me gather myself a little bit. So the whole purpose of this really was that, as hard as that whole experience was, I felt so honored to be there. And what I understand about life and death is that, and death itself, well, let me share a story with you about my brother, Chris, who wasn't able to be there. He had suffered what they call a widowmaker heart attack, and somehow, miraculously, he got himself to the hospital, and then coded on the table. His heart stopped for 15 minutes. And his experience left him with both a feeling like not really understanding how he could have survived that and why he's still here, but also with no fear of death at all. Because death, what I've heard over and over again from people that I know and things that I've read, is that when the dying process may be painful, but death itself is just like walking into another room. We just taking off our overcoat, which is our physical body, and just walking into another room. And it's a beautiful experience. People who've had near-death experiences, and they have a choice whether to stay or go. Most of the time they want to stay. So I wanted to share this story with you, really just to open the discussion up for the fact that here in the West, it's better, much better than it's ever been, especially with the work of a woman named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a hospice worker, and she wrote a lot about the death process. And so we're not quite as reluctant to actually speak about it, talk about it. And when people are dying, they actually do want to talk about it. And we're like, no, I don't want to talk about the fact that you're not going to be here anymore. We want to push it away. But it's not, it's silly, because we're all going to go there someday. We're all going to die. So being able to talk to people about it. I treated a woman one time. Her friends knew she was dying of cancer, and they bought her a massage. So I took my table and I went to her house, and she was very close to death. I think she died a few days later. She didn't really want a massage. People who are dying don't necessarily, they're disengaging from the physical body. So touch is not really something that is, caressing maybe, but a massage is usually not something that they want in their last moments. She just wanted to talk about what's next for her and what I knew about it. And she said because her friends wouldn't let her talk about it. It's not that they didn't care. They just couldn't face the fact that they weren't going to have her anymore. But this was her journey. She was going through it and needed to talk about it. So I think some of this message is to, if they don't want to talk about it, and that certainly can happen too, but open the door to people. It might be a really beautiful experience to be able to share what we know, what we feel about it. And with that woman that I treated, there was this beautiful angel that showed up in the room, tall. She must have been like 10 feet tall. And I told her, this is pretty funny. I said, there's actually an angel in the room with you. And I imagine that she's here to help you. And Archangel Azrael, if you'll see in the newsletter this week, is the angel that helped souls cross over. So I'm not sure that was Azrael, but it was a beautiful experience. And she really, it was kind of a closure moment for her. So anyhow, this blog is already over 15 minutes, so I think I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you for, sharing this and allowing me to get a little bit weepy, but it's all part of it. So hope everyone has a wonderful day. Namaste.